From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun as he does each and every podcast. Is Andre Johnson
Jr.
Do not forget the JR at the end of the name. It's very important to remember the Junior. Before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, and review. If you are watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. And, of course, if you are watching us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, hi, good to see you. Glad you have found us here on our new network for sports here in the region. All right, so it's Friday.
Whew.
Not a normal Friday. It's a day after a game Friday, which means we got a lot to talk about on this podcast today, and it ain't good. It's not good. It hadn't been good for quite some time for your New Orleans Saints. But before we get into that, how you feeling?
Man, Sean, I came in, and one thing I do here at Fox 8, I archive. To archive, that means you rewatch the entire game from field level and you sort it into different folders. So every time I archive, I got to rewatch the Saints game from the previous day. It was painful. It was painful. Just I couldn't wait for it to be over. So I couldn't imagine how a lot of fans felt watching that game yesterday. And we're really going to dive into that pain today, Sean.
Yeah, we're going to dive into it. We were on last night. The final bet basically became a post-game show. So I heard from a lot of you guys that watched it. So I appreciate that because the game was not on our air. So that means you flipped it over to our coverage after the game to hear what we had to say. So we definitely appreciate that. But the Saints take the L to Denver Broncos, another primetime loss, the fifth loss in a row, and it just seems to be getting uglier and uglier and uglier, and it all really came to a head last night inside Caesars Superdome with a 33-10 defeat to the Denver Broncos. So we've got to tap into this because there's a whole lot to get into with this loss.
Yeah, and a lot of people have been talking. A lot of people woke up surprised that head coach Dennis Allen is still head coach Dennis Allen, and that's kind of where we're going with the big picture today is around that organization. We know the seats are hot, but just how hot are the seats around that Saints organization?
Well, they should be burning up, but they're not. There is going to be some more pressure. We know that. But let's just get into it. So a disaster of epic proportions, an utter embarrassment on national TV, a bloodbath provided by the Broncos. Pick an expression, pick a saying. They're all accurate ways to describe what happened to the Saints on Thursday night. And the day Sean Payton returned to the Superdome, he dismantled the mess of a football team that he helped create. The Broncos are not good. The Broncos are not good. The Saints just made them look that way. In an absolute stunning fall from grace, the defense once again fell apart. A once proud unit all of a sudden can't tackle anyone. They can't stop the run. The Broncos aren't even a good rushing offense, and yet they somehow ran right over and through the Saints for over 200 yards on the ground once again. If it weren't for a few Bo Nix, random dirt misses early on, it would have been a lot worse than that 33-10 score. They were very fortunate to be down 16-3 at half. Offensively, things were comically bad. No rhythm, no run game, and a depth chart and play style that resembled a preseason finale. It was hard to decipher that preseason finale from that game. In fact, the preseason finale might have been better. At no point did it ever feel like the Saints had any chance of winning that game, and that is completely unacceptable. This was the kind of loss that should make an organization rethink everything, which brings us to job security questions. How hot is the seat? Scale of 1 to 10. Maybe it's crept up a little bit. It should be at an 8 or a 9 or a 10, but I'm not getting that vibe from the organization. Head coach Dennis Allen said he didn't agree with Richard Sherman's comments that players were playing like they wanted to get him fired. He also said he wasn't worried about his own job security. Maybe that's delusional. Maybe that's putting on a brave face after a tough battle. Or maybe that's how he actually feels because he's been assured that he will be okay. At this point, it doesn't matter. Does it really matter? It does not matter. His team is 2-5, and they are objectively getting worse every week. There is nothing you can look at the last 3 weeks and said they're getting better at something. They are not. They are not. It's going down. The arrow is pointing down. The fan base has made their thoughts clear on this matter. We know it. They want Allen gone. Like I said before, completely understandable. You were the paying customer, and I saw a lot of y'all paying customers out the door way before that game ended on Thursday, and I don't blame you one bit. In my opinion, though, we've alluded to this, that sentiment doesn't go far enough. Any talk of moving on from Allen as head coach must also be met with the same vigor and strong consideration from moving on from the man who hired him. The current problem is deeper than Dennis Allen. It's organizational. It's institutional. This vision has led them down a path of mediocrity. That vision, now that the former head coach is gone, is solely Mickey Loomis. Solely Mickey Loomis, who's been on this job since 2002. He has been doing this job for a long, long, long time. So at some point, accountability has to point in his direction. So any sort of thought, any sort of hot seat, and I agree, it should be getting higher. I haven't picked up on they're going to fire him anytime soon. I think it would have to get really, really crazy, like 2-8, 2-9, 2-10 for that to really become a consideration. But do not short-sight this thing, because this is institutional, it's infrastructure, it's organizational. The whole organizational approach has led them down this path. The easiest, I guess, the easiest body to get rid of is the head coach, but it is so much deeper than that. So I don't know if that answers a direct question about how hot are the seats. I just know it should be more than just one person.
Absolutely. I mean, Dennis Allen, if you got rid of him tomorrow, this team doesn't get any better necessarily. If Dennis Allen doesn't coach against the Broncos, do they lose by less? Do they win the game? No, they don't, because you have a lot of problems, like you said, across this organization and on this team. And when you look at yesterday, I don't want to be had to be negative Nancy last podcast. Let me say the good from yesterday. Kendre Miller looked good. In his first game back, Kendre Miller looked good. That's number one. Number two, there is no number two. That's it. That's the only good thing you could take from the game.
I was surprised that was number one.
That's the only thing. That's why. Now, when you get to the bad, and it's unfortunate because he is a rookie quarterback. He's a young guy, but Spencer Rattler did not play a good game. I understand that a lot of the fan base likes Spencer Rattler, but he did not play a good game yesterday, Sean. And Dennis Allen, you talk about head coaching decisions. There's a lot of things that maybe wouldn't change with Dennis Allen isn't coach, but one decision that Dennis Allen stood 10 toes down on was starting Spencer Rattler. Despite the fact that Jake Haener was the second quarterback throughout the preseason for the most part, throughout the regular season, when Derek Carr got hurt, it was Haener that came in. When they needed to make a decision after Derek Carr got hurt in Kansas City, the very next week it was Spencer Rattler that came in. And Dennis Allen said, we feel like he gives us the best chance to win. Since then, you're 0-2, and when they asked him about his decision moving into the next game, who would be the starting quarterback when you go to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers, and I thought it was interesting, he was a lot less committal when he was talking about his quarterback. He went from saying, Spencer gives us the best chance to win, we love his skill set, he's been great with the scout team, to all of a sudden, we're going to look at the decision, we'll see who gives us the best chance to win, and we'll go from there. And I just think that you've gone as far as you can with Spencer Rattler, and they may need to look at taking a change. But just talking about the kid, Sean, the rookie Spencer Rattler in his second start against Denver, what did you see from him?
All right, we going here now. All right, good. I'm going to go here now because I'm not here to beat up on Spencer Rattler. I'm really not, because I didn't expect him to win these last two games, and I honestly didn't have I didn't really have a problem with DA's rationale for starting him. But you're right. I think a little bit of the excitement's worn off with DA about it. He talked with a genuine excitement about Spencer Rattler that didn't quite have that. He didn't quite have that same level of excitement today, although he was pretty complimentary about the way he played when he had protection. Okay. And this is for the trolls out there who love to throw stuff at me or quote tweet other podcasts about us. So here it is. When Derek Carr returns from injury, he's the guy.
Yeah.
Okay. It seemed pretty obvious after Spencer Rattler's first game as a starter, where it was clear he had some enticing traits, but also he wasn't there yet. We said this. He was not there yet to lead the franchise. Most fifth-round rookie picks aren't. Rattler seems to understand this. His ardent supporters out there who come after us a lot do not. When I said that he is not there yet, on Monday's podcast following the Bucs loss, Rattler fans unleashed fury. Not just in the comment section, but social media. And like I said, social media, not even our social media, but other people's social media directed towards us. Well, maybe they understand now. I hope you understand now. And if you don't understand now, you're delusional. You're delusional. Of course, what happened Thursday night was not all Rattler's fault. We know that. Of course, a rookie making his second start behind a makeshift offensive line without the team's top two receivers is a recipe for disaster. But that's a big part of it. But in the parts he could control, Rattler was not nearly good enough. He was not as good as he was a week before. I know it was a short week, but above all else, it looked like the game was moving too fast for him. It looked like it was moving way too fast for him. He never looked comfortable in the pocket, and it threw him off all night. He once again opened the game with a very nice play. Bootleg play, looked like it went to the middle of the field, on a corner route to Foster Moreau, gained like 20 yards or 40 yards, something like that. It was bad field position to good field position in one play, but unlike last week, that's where his highlights pretty much ended for the night. I mean, he almost got picked off on his second pass of the game. He could have had 3 takeaways in his first 3 drives, or 3 turnovers in his first 3 drives. He was very fortunate it was only 1. And many will look at the 5 or 6 times he got sacked in the game and say it was because of the protection. And in some cases, that's definitely true. But in others, like the first turnover of the game where he didn't see the blitz coming and missed the hot read, he lacked awareness pre and post snap. And right now, 2 games in, you can definitively say Spencer Rattler's biggest weakness, he does not do well against the blitz. It's going to keep coming, folks. It's going to keep coming until he figures that out. Again, these are normal things that every single rookie quarterback goes through in their first couple starts. And there is nothing wrong with an organization or a fan base being excited about having a young quarterback. Rattler can still very much have a very bright future in this league, in this organization ahead of him. But for the present, let me restate it out there because I cannot believe this was even remotely controversial. This team needs Derek Carr healthy to have any chance of turning this season around. Turning the season around comes if Derek Carr is healthy, not if Spencer Rattler is the guy going here for it. Maybe Spencer Rattler will have a decent future if he has a long stretch of games and he can get better at some point. But right now, if the goal is to turn your season around and get to the postseason and get to the playoffs, which I know is looking bleaker and bleaker every single week, Derek Carr might be able to help you with that. Spencer Rattler is not going to be the guy to do that.
Absolutely, and I agree. He has not been good under pressure. A lot of that is him identifying the blitz before the snap and getting out to his hot read. I will say this for him, though. The team is not helping him in the form of they've gotten off to 2 really bad starts with him. When you go down 13-0 against the Denver Broncos, when you go down 17-0 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what that does is take out your best playmaker who's on the field, Alvin Kamara. It's very difficult to commit to the run when you're down 2 possessions, 3 possessions late in the first, early in the second quarter. We've talked about how this Clint Kubiak offense works best when you're able to run the ball effectively. What's been going the last 3 weeks? They haven't been able to run the ball effectively because they dropped down 13 points to Denver, 17 points to Tampa. And if you want to go back to Kansas City was up 10-0 at one point. You can't get off to a slow start and want to run the ball to help your quarterback.
And they can't run the ball right now.
Exactly. They can't run the ball on top of that. And now that's forcing Spencer Rattler to throw more than you want him to throw. He had 40 passes against Tampa. He had 35 against Denver. In no world are you winning a game where Spencer Rattler has to throw 35 passes. And I guarantee you when Dennis Allen went to Rattler, the vision was not for him to throw 35, 40 passes to get that win. When you look at the wins that Derek Carr had, he attempted 23 passes against Carolina, only needed 16 against Dallas.
That's unbelievable, yeah.
25 against Philadelphia. He had 36 against Atlanta, 28 against Kansas City in a game that he left early. So when Derek Carr was at his most effective, he was only throwing about 20 passes a game. Spencer Rattler is almost doubling that because you're unable to run the ball and you're going down early in games, and that's not helping him at all. But he's also not helping himself. It seems like where he's most comfortable is on the run.
Mm-hmm.
He has attempted, in his first start, he attempted about 32% of his passes on the run.
Mm-hmm.
Another 26% yesterday on the run. 32% of your passes on the run is the most of any quarterback in any game this season. In his 2 starts, he's thrown more passes on the run by percent than any other quarterback in the league. And he's not doing that because he's being forced out of the pocket. He's doing that because he just doesn't seem comfortable in the pocket. And I think that's where, when I talk about Jake Haener, we saw Jake Haener go down the field pretty easily on the last drive of the game. Obviously, it was garbage time. Maybe the Broncos weren't as locked in as they might have been in the first or second quarter. But Jake Haener, one thing you saw from that drive, he got the ball out quick.
Yeah.
Rattler, it's almost like he's holding the ball. He's trying to scramble out. He's looking for the big play. Jake Haener knows them wheels not really working like Spencer Rattler's works. He's not going anywhere. With Haener, he can sit in the pocket. He can make quick plays. Does he have the strong arm like Rattler? Maybe not. Does he have the big play ability? Is he going to break out and run for 30 yards like Rattler did? Probably not. But I think in 2 games, you've seen everything that you need to see out of Spencer Rattler. He's thrown 1 touchdown. He's got several turnovers, and it could have easily been more turnovers than he actually has. I think if you're going to L.A., you've got a long week, 10 days to potentially get a new starter ready to go on the road. I think the Saints should take a strong look at starting Jake Haener.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because you seem to be on the Haener train now, and I know you and I talked about it last night. And it's almost like Haener's last couple of minutes, it's almost like he saw the game being played when he wasn't in, and almost like he's like, oh, if I get in, I'm going to do this. If I get in, I'm going to do this. If they do this. It's almost like him being on the sideline kind of helped because he was able to kind of see the full picture, maybe a little bit more than Spencer did. Because sometimes when those blitzers are coming like that, I mean, you'd be surprised how much the vision just shrinks if you're a quarterback, especially a quarterback with not a whole lot of experience. And you're right. I mean, look, this offense is not built for any quarterback to throw 40 times a game and win, much less a rookie on his second start. So, I mean, I don't want to be too harsh on Spencer Rattler because right now I think he's actually it's not terrible. It's certainly not good, but it's like, okay, it's right where I would expect a 5th-round pick to be through 2 starts. But, you know, and look, I don't want to go too hard on the fan base, like trying to annoy him or holding on to him, because I understand they want something. They want some kind of measure of hope, something to hope for a bright future. And believe me, it would be so easy for me to play into that right now and just make you all feel better. But I cannot physically say something that I don't necessarily believe to be true. I don't think it's going to be true eventually. Just right now, I cannot definitively say he is the future of this franchise. And somehow, if you don't say that about Spencer Rattler after 2 starts, 2 losses, where basically he played bad for 6 out of the 8 quarters, somehow we're haters. I don't understand. But I just look. Let's just keep it like this. If I don't even have a problem if DA plays Rattler next week. I really don't, because they probably will have Ruiz back. Looks like they might get Taysom back, and I think that will certainly help the run game, which will help him. But for those out there that were hoping for the savior after 2 games and somehow push number 4 out the door, that's just not happening. That's just not happening, because that's been kind of an undercurrent throughout the whole thing. But I think what I've learned, if you want to look towards the future and not really care about the results of the next few games because, you know, you want to see what you have and do what teams do when they're kind of checked out on the season, then fine, maybe you do that. But I know this team still wants to make the playoffs because Dennis Allen's job is riding on it. Mickey Loomis, I don't think he would ever get fired, but I do think the heat is on him. I think he's getting probably more criticism now than he's ever gotten in his tenure here.
Yeah.
So all those things lead me to say Derek Carr is the guy. Now, would Jake Haener do a little bit better? The best thing you can do for a young quarterback, the best thing a young quarterback can do when he's constantly getting blitzed, and look, by the second half of last game to now, it's clear what defensive coordinators are going to do with Spencer Rattler. But the best thing you can do, quick, find the hot, and they will all of a sudden back off when they realize they cannot get to you off the extra man. Because every time you send the extra guy, there is a spot on the field where they're a weakness. And if you hit that weakness or more often than not, they're going to back off, and then you'll have more favorable looks and more favorable execution, and the clock in your head is not sped up so much. So I'm not over the Spencer Rattler experiment. I do think he does have some enticing traits that he can get better at. But to say that, like he's the guy, he's the franchise savior, come on, man. Like you're asking me to say something that I just fundamentally do not know to be true right now. So hopefully that clarifies things and we can all be friends again, because that really just like I couldn't believe that was even remotely controversial to say. I mean, we were pretty fair with the grade we gave him last week, and then this past week he was worse than I wouldn't give him no C+ this week. It would probably be like a D+ this week, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think again, I was born in '95. I started locking into football probably around 2005, so I missed a lot of the Aints paper bag
you
days.
missed all that, yeah.
But I think when it comes to the fan base, you look across the NFL. So many teams over the last 20 years have had that young guy that was drafted to be the face. That Cam Newton, you want to go more recent, the Lamar Jackson, the Jaden Daniels. A lot of teams have drafted a young quarterback to be the face of the city, the face of the franchise, and the city has had a chance to rally around a new, young, fresh face.
Absolutely.
The New Orleans Saints, since I've been watching football, have not had that.
No.
Drew Brees was a veteran when he came here. Then you go to Jameis, another veteran. You get Taysom. He had been in the league for a long time. Andy Dalton, he's a veteran. You go to Derek Carr, another veteran. This city's never had a young guy, so it's like you have a young rookie, even if he was drafted in the 5th round. I just think they wanted to grasp onto something and somebody, but
That's reasonable.
yeah, and I get it. I don't think Spencer Rattler is necessarily that guy. And like you said, Jake Haener, when it comes to getting the ball out quick, that's what he did in that last drive. And it's interesting when you listen to defensive players talk. I was listening to one recently. He said that Tom Brady was the hardest quarterback to ever sack. It wasn't Cam Newton, Lamar Jackson, the guys with the mobility and all the crazy stuff. It was Tom Brady because he gets the ball out so quick.
Yeah, and I have no, and I'm not even suggesting they should have started Haener the last 2 games. Because I trusted the coaches, I trusted that staff, because I don't know the results would have been that much different with Haener. I think both games were going to be tough for them to win with backup quarterback. But we got to be realistic with where things are and where the organization is and the players that they currently have. And I understand wanting to hope for a rookie quarterback because it's fun, it's young, it's exciting. He's a playmaker, but I think we've seen the last couple of games, he's just simply not there yet. But he is playing because of injuries, and I think that brings us to another reality we have to face because, look, we're never going to give them a pass for injuries, but I do think we have to just acknowledge we now know there is no hoping. We know they do not have enough depth to overcome this remarkably high amount of injuries. And a lack of depth is a problem in and of itself. But at this point, let's just accept the reality here. The only thing that's going to help this New Orleans Saints team in 2024 is if they somehow get better health. We know the health situation took an even worse turn Thursday. Rashid Shaheed out. Paulson Adebo, man, that just sounds incredibly painful. A broken femur, had to get surgery that night. So when it rains, it pours. But silver lining, Derek Carr should be back soon. Didn't sound like the Chargers game is what they're hoping for. Sounds more like the Panthers game. Week 9 will be it. Yeah. So again, I'm not going to pick the Saints to beat the Chargers with a backup quarterback. So I expect them to be 2-6. But Taysom Hill, Cesar Ruiz, Chris Olave should be back fairly soon. Eric McCoy, they said he's on the shorter end of the timetable, so maybe he's back early November. So that is the only thing. If you're out there and haven't gone with the let's just tank and get a top 2 pick or a top 3 pick camp yet, and you still want to see how this season closes out, that's the only hope. The problem is you just got to hope you're not in the hole, the hole too big of a hole to get down and dig yourself out of. Because even when you get Derek Carr back, even when you get Taysom Hill back, even when you get McCoy back and Ruiz back, there's no guarantee you're winning those games. You're going to be better off, but there's no guarantee you're going to win those games down the stretch. So let's just hope that they can get healthy pretty soon. But I do think the one thing that they need to do, 2, one is obvious. I don't know, how do you not tackle anymore? And
Rush
then also
defense used to be this defensive strength.
You've got hopefully get Lucas Patrick back too because he didn't play last week. You've got to be able to run the football. They have not run the football in 3 weeks. It feels like so. You do that, maybe you'll have a chance. But until then, we'll just keep waiting.
Right, and it's ironic you brought that up because I had literally just written down, are injuries a valid excuse for this team? Because they've seen a lot of injuries, and obviously everybody's banged up, but this is a bit excessive compared to some of the other teams in the league. And then also you say next man up, but GM Mickey Loomis necessarily hasn't built an offense that's viable for next man up because they don't really have depth at any position on the offense. So when you look at the injury situation, and we talked at the beginning of Dennis Allen, how hot is his seat? If there's anything that might put some ice on that seat, it's the injury excuse.
And I think Loomis even said as much in that controversial interview that is making waves everywhere right now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like you can look at Dennis Allen and say, oh, he's 2-5, but one could easily say, and it's being said in my group messages full of Saints fans, well, we were 2-0 when we were healthy. We were undefeated, #1 offense, averaging 40 points a game before McCoy went down and Carr went down and Ruiz went down and Taysom and all of that. So if there's any reason that Dennis Allen would stay an extra year or at least buy his way to the end of the year, the injury excuse would be the one.
Yeah, I just, unless they continue losing with starters back, I don't see DA getting canned mid-season. I could see him getting fired after the season if they don't make the playoffs. So it's terribly disappointing. But I know that's what a lot of people want. But I don't know if that's going to happen yet. And if they do get to that point, it would need to be, in my opinion, more than just DA. It needs to go higher up the food chain, as I alluded to a couple times here on this podcast and last night on the Final Bet show that turned into our Saints postgame show. So, anyway, Saints are now 2-5. It sucks. Enjoy the weekend. I will too. I will enjoy the weekend. I got a couple days off. I'm gonna watch football Saturday, football Sunday, and just chill and relax with the family. You got any plans?
Oh, I'm gonna do the same thing. I promise. I've been working all week, long hours. I'm kicking back tomorrow and not moving from my couch.
All right, you earned it, sir. All right, so that'll do it for us. For Andre Johnson Jr., I am Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.